Hello, and welcome back to Laughing in a Tent. This is the final episode of season 1, so I hope you all have enjoyed the series thus far, and I know I have really enjoyed it. I thought today we would just do a reflection on the podcast, just talk about some things that are top of mind as I'm going into season 2, as well as some things to expect looking forward. So just really quick, some housekeeping. This is the last episode I'll be doing for this season, like I mentioned, and then we'll be going to season 2, in which I will be talking more about my teenage years, and that'll include a whole range of topics, and it's going to be really fun to talk about. I'm actually super excited. So we'll talk about CD and mental health stuff, we'll talk about the temple, we'll talk about beauty and modesty and dating culture and all sorts of good stuff. So it's going to be great. So stay tuned. If you don't want to miss any videos, you can hit subscribe. I think you have to hit the bell in order to be notified, so you can do that if you feel like it. So the first thing I want to talk about is just reflecting on the purpose I had for this podcast. So initially when I started, one of the big purposes I had was to give back and thank the ex-Mormon community. So when I first left the church, being part of the church, it is an enormous part of your life. So it leaves a really big void. One of the big downsides of being in the church, I feel, is just obeying authority without really questioning it or having critical thinking about things. And so you don't really want to just bring that with you to the ex-Mormon side. You don't want to just have Alyssa Grenfell. Anything Alyssa Grenfell says is truth, is law, you know. And I think it's nice to find somebody who can kind of make those decisions for you. I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. It can be really scary going out in the world just without someone else to be their authority in their life. And Samantha Shelley on the Shelf was really warning against that we need to learn to become our own authorities in life. And I really support that message. I think that's a really good way to look at it. So I think it's really important to find that sense of self, that differentiation in the church. It can feel like there's a way to be 100% certain of what you're doing. And then you're Exmormon, just faced with the reality that life is just a lot of nuance and a lot of shades of gray. And so I think that is really hard, and I think it's really helpful sometimes to have Exmormon voices, because especially in those initial times, it can feel very isolating, it can feel very scary. Like, where do I even go from here? I feel like when you first leave the church, sometimes it's all you want to talk about. I can just hyperfixate on it, especially for me, because I was like so into the church. It was my whole life. Like, when you leave the church, it's like, do you have a life anymore? It's destabilizing. So sometimes it's really nice to have that cushion to fall on of like Exmormon content, because it just feels like you can plug one into the void that was left by the other one. And I think it's really important to build your own framework of meaning. And Zelph on the Shelf is another one of my big inspirations. And something that Samantha Shelley from that channel has said is that like, you shouldn't really just rely on anyone to be your guru, that like, no one is perfect. And I think for me that was really helpful to have people like Alyssa Grenfell and Zelph on the Shelf and a bunch of other people. I'll put some more of my suggestions in the show notes. But just to have podcasters like that who got it and could kind of talk through like, yeah, I know it sucks right now, but it won't be this bad forever. Eventually you will process things and you'll get through things and it'll be okay. And I really appreciated that kind of guiding hand for me. I really enjoyed listening to podcasts about things I already knew about Mormonism, just because I just wanted to talk about it and think about it all the time, because I was just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so I think a big part of this is I want to be that for someone else. And so yeah, I feel like I've been able to do that in the way I wanted to. And I think I've lived up to my goal there of just sharing really deep random facts about Mormonism. And of course I have so much more I'd like to do, but I think we're on a good track. So the second thing I want to talk about is another goal of this podcast, which is to help me process things personally. So when I first came out of the church, I was initially planning on looking at other religions. I still believed in God. I still expected to be religious because it had been such a huge part of my life. So when I was first edging out of the church, I was looking into a pastor I really liked. He just talks a lot about how Jesus would help the people who don't have a great lot in life and society. And that just resonated a lot more with me, because I feel like just in the church we don't talk as much about what LGBTQ plus people are dealing with or what immigrants in the country are dealing with. And I just really liked that pastor would bring up those things and would grapple with those questions, and also look to the Bible to be like, God commanded us to love these people and love everybody, and also the Bible verses that are against immigration or LGBTQ rights are largely taken out of context, and also the Bible is a very problematic historical document. So I liked how he focused on the principles of love instead of just picking a random Bible verse and dying on that hill. I thought that was pretty cool. So that was my very early stage. And then coming out of that, I deconstructed my belief in God, which was rough. And then I got really nihilist for a while. And then, I don't know, I just kind of started learning more about philosophy for a little while. And I'm not going to lie, I was like really depressed. It was not great. If that's you, it sucks, not to minimize. But in my experience, it didn't last forever. Eventually, I was able to dig out of that hole and kind of get to an okay place again. And it's been a growth process, but it's almost been, let's see, it's almost been a year. I think it'll be a year and a few more months. So maybe it's been like 8 months or something since I left the church. And I feel since then I've just really grown a lot. And it's been really cool to see through my podcast that growth, because the first episode I did, I wasn't even sure if I was going to post it. It was like I just ranted for 45 minutes about my whole experience leaving the church. And that's my first episode on this channel. So you can go back and see that if you would like. It's just interesting to look back at that because I just feel like I was justifying myself a lot, and I was also trying not to come off as too mean, but I also was like really upset, and like I feel like some of the emotional intensity was coming out, but I was also trying to censor myself and be really apologetic about it. And so it's just a very interesting thing to watch. And then after that, I don't know, I feel like I got more into sharing my story on the podcast. I was like really excited to see how well the first video did, so I put more time into the podcast. And that was fun. I feel like I was able to think through things that had happened in Mormonism, especially things that were positive, like talking about girls' camp. I was like, oh, these are some really good memories. And then it also helped me see things that I hadn't noticed before about my upbringing. For example, even with girls' camp, it was a really nostalgic memory, but there are also some kind of weird parts that are like kind of problematic or unsafe or just not really a positive message, you know? And so I think it's been good making a podcast because then I am forced to see the nuance. Because I think the church, it takes a lot. It takes a lot from your life. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money. It takes your whole concept of yourself. You learn to subjugate secondary eyes, your like actual core personality under this umbrella of the church. The church is your identity, literally. And so yeah, it's just, I feel like it's hard to kind of know yourself. And I feel like through this podcast, I've been able to kind of delve into who am I? What things did I like? What things didn't I like? And then also, I'm not wanting to start a fight. So I'm like, I want to present this in a way that's as generous as I can. And so I feel like that forced me to see some of the nuance of some of the good things that were there. But then it's also the things that I think are good while I'm saying it out loud and talking about it to an audience that could include people who were never Mormon. That I'm like, oh, actually, that was kind of crazy. So I feel like it also helps me give myself more validation that, yeah, that was a wild upbringing. There were some crazy things going on. Even in the good memories, it's like there's always just kind of that's a little off. So yeah, that's been cool. I think it's been really nice to process my experiences. And I think after I'm in the midst of my girls' camp series, I lost my whole audience because I could not keep it to one episode. I did 6 episodes on girls' camp. And I know no one cares that much. But come on, guys. It was interesting, okay? If you haven't watched it, you should go back and watch it. I don't even care. Put in one earbud. Just turn it off or flip it over or whatever if you don't have YouTube Premium. Go clean your house. Listen to it on 2 times speed. There are some good stories in there, okay? Maybe it's only entertaining to me, but I really think there's some good ones in there. I've gotten better at it. I'm trying to get better at it. But yeah, I think it's also helped me learn how to summarize things and how to video edit and all these practical skills, which are handy. And now a very brief word from our sponsor, which is my Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much to those of you who are donating to my Patreon. So for this next season, I'll be revamping the Patreon a bit. My plan right now is that for $1 a month, you can have access to all of my YouTube videos. And since like on YouTube Premium, you can't turn off the screen without it pausing, that's why I'm putting them on Patreon so that you can just have easier listening experience on Patreon, just a bit more streamlined. And so that's for $1 a month. You can access all of my prior YouTube videos, which I'll be uploading gradually over the next couple weeks, maybe a month, depending on how long it takes. And then any new videos as well. And then for $5 a month, you can also access exclusive Patreon videos and posts and things. I have posts about my just like lifestyle stuff, just things I'm doing. And I also have short videos about just random topics in Mormonism. Usually they're more unedited and natural, and sometimes I'll talk about things I'm doing in my life. So, lots of options. If you want to be really cool, for $200, you get the wonderful bonus of being called a goddess on high. That is the name of that tier. They all have funny names, so go check it out at least. It would be fun. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks. And then another purpose of the podcast that I kind of went into it with is I want to help people who are not Mormon kind of understand Mormons for kind of two reasons. One, I don't really want people to just walk into the church and not really know what they're in for. A lot of the things I'm talking about are things that I wasn't really aware of until I left the church, or at least until pretty mid deconstruction or later. And I just don't think it's fair for people who weren't raised in the church, who don't know that cultural context, to just kind of not be aware and be sucked into it. There's a big thing in Exmormonism, just of informed consent, that the church hides a lot of things from investigators, like purposely does not teach the tricky stuff until much later and kind of postpones it as long as humanly possible. Basically because it'll make them not want to get baptized. And they talk about milk before meat, which I feel like is just code for you have to be deep in the church enough to not leave over these things. I think the idea is that you have to be spiritually in tune enough to understand the deep esoteric doctrines of the church. But they're hiding it. And these are things that people would want to know before being baptized often. Just things about how women are treated and how children are taught in kind of problematic, intense, kind of scary ways from very, very young. And just all that the church takes of your time and money and personality, and just what it leaves you with when or if you eventually get out, and just all the ways it can impact your life in really major ways, like even just persuading you to have a kid, definitely before you were ready. It's a lot. I don't want anyone to trip over a Book of Mormon and find themselves in that. If that's what you want, great. Happy for you. But I think people ought to have the full information. And so that's important to me. And I think too, for another reason, I feel like the way that general culture looks at Mormons is one of two main ways. One, that they're crazy and cultists, which I do really want to help people understand that Mormons are not the bad guy. The individual members, they truly believe this stuff. By and large, Mormons believe that they're doing the right thing, that they're actually following God. And I think that if the church is doing harm, that the members are a very big chunk of its victims. I do not think that the run-of-the-mill member is malicious. Generally, I think they truly do have good intentions and truly believe they're doing the right thing, which is why I think they double down so much and have such crazy, intense religious devotion, because I truly believe this. If any non-Mormon could walk away from this with one message, I think it'd be that maybe two messages. One, the Mormon church is really intense, and it's not something you want to get into without absolutely going through all the information. And two, the members, they really believe it. They're genuinely sincere, generally. And a lot of times, too, they don't know all the information. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things where if a member learns it, they will leave the church. And it's also hard because you can't predict what those things are. It's different for every person. So, you can't really force someone out of the church by telling them information. It doesn't work at all. But there are things that they may not know. And there are things that they know that they've been taught some crazy mental gymnastics to rationalize away. So, yeah. Anyway, just things to keep in mind. I kind of want to foster compassion and understanding, as well as just informed consent among non-members. And then the final reason that I love this podcast and why I'm doing this podcast is it's just really fun. I don't know. I love having the creative outlet, for one thing. I love planning videos, and it's fun to think through things and philosophize about things and then engage with you guys in the comments. I love hearing what you think. And it's just fun to talk out loud and process things and wonder about things. I don't know. I have such a weird relationship with Mormonism now. It's such a love-hate thing because on the one hand, I am really upset about how it impacted my life in a lot of ways. I'm actually extremely angry and sad. I've had a lot of grief to work through and just a lot of big feelings about the church. On the other hand, it is my childhood. It's my family. It's how I met my husband. It's the reason I had my daughter. It's it's impacted so many things in my life. And the university I went to, my alma mater, is funded by the church. So it's just such a big part of my past. And not even to mention my ancestors. My fourth grade grandparents crossed the plains to meet the Mormons in Utah, and they helped settle. I hate that word because it was settled. There were indigenous people here, just the Mormons killed them or kicked them out. But my ancestors were some of the first white people to be in the area. And it's just crazy. It's crazy how deep it goes. And anyway, so I guess I just have this love-hate relationship that on the one hand, I'm really mad about everything it's done to me. On the other hand, it's really nostalgic. They're my people, and it is my culture. Whether I want it to be or not is my inheritance, my heritage. So it is meaningful to just think about where I came from, what my roots are. And then also just Joseph Smith, what a character. He did some really horrible things. Like, he was a pedophile. I think I'm okay being on record saying that. And he just lied a lot and was not a super nice person in many other ways. However, he had a very interesting science fiction mind. There are some claims to be made about plagiarism and racism. Very valid. Also, the cosmology he came up with, like the degrees of glory and Kolob and becoming like gods and like, God begat God, like I won't be a god because I'm a woman, but if I were a man, I would be a god, and my son would be a god, and that son would be a god, like all the way down. I don't know, that's just so interesting. I don't know, I enjoy Mormonism as a fandom, if that makes sense. I feel like I've put so many years, okay, we'll get more into this in season 2, so please stay tuned, it's gonna be so interesting. But largely because of my OCD, and just because of how devout I was, like, oh my goodness. I consumed so much. I soaked in so much Mormonism. So I feel like I've spent my whole life. It's almost like, I feel like with Lord of the Rings or something. I think it's called Silmarillion. I'm sorry. I'm not a real fan, but I think it's called the Silmarillion, but it's just, there's tons and tons of writing about Lord of the Rings. I feel like it's as if my whole life, everyone in my life thought the Lord of the Rings was absolutely historically accurate and taught me it was absolutely historically accurate, and I endured opposition from my peers who told me like that it was fake or that I was weird because I dressed like a hobbit every day going to school. I feel like it's just like that level of this was my life. And so it's like I know everything about this fandom now. Like I know so much about all the rules. I know so much about like where you go after you die and like all of the just philosophy of the whole thing. Like, why do we do this? Why do we do that? I feel like I know so much of this. So just purely from an interest perspective, it's just fun. If people are like wondering, okay, why do Mormons do this? Is this allowed? What about in this situation? That's so interesting. I love like thinking through I don't know, just the ins and outs and the intricacies and the absurd complexity of Mormonism. It's so detailed. And I don't know, I find it very entertaining. I always enjoyed what we used to call space doctrine, just the esoteric stuff that doesn't really have to do much with the here and now, but just the God level, too complicated for human brains to grasp kind of stuff. And like, I don't know, all the stuff about owning your own planets, or what is the priesthood? How does it work? Like, where does God get his power? And who was God before God? Like, all of that stuff I've always enjoyed. So I think as a Mormon, you're encouraged not to speculate about things that you don't know. And honestly, I think some of that is almost a liability thing, because I think sometimes people in the past used to speculate about things they don't know. They'd just go off about, this is why black people can't have the priesthood, or this is who Heavenly Mother is, or this is how we feel about evolution. And then like all of those have caused embarrassment for the church down the line. And with some of them, they were really strong. There's a 1949 First Presidency statement talking about really racist reasons why black people can't hold the priesthood, like all this crap about being descendants of Cain. It is a mess. That was one of the last things that got me out, because it's like, where do you go from there? If the prophet and his 2 closest counselors sign this off with the stamp of God, metaphorical stamp, but still, this is supposed to be legit. And so anyway, I think the church has learned that they can't really make any definitive claims, or else somebody will come for them eventually. So now we are encouraged to stick to we love Jesus and not really go much beyond that. We'll talk about Joe Smith, we'll talk about other things, but we try to keep it really chill and vanilla and basic at church, because if you get into the space doctrines, then that just leaves a lot of potential for people to get upset or have disagreements in the church, or go digging too much and find things they weren't supposed to see. I don't know all their rationales, but those are the ones I would guess. So anyway, I feel like as a Mormon, I didn't go into space doctrine as much as I maybe would have liked to. And so it's fun that now I can just only talk about that because I feel like it. So, good times. Anyway, I should probably wrap this up, but it has been truly lovely being with all of you. I'm really looking forward to season 2. If you are interested in donating to my Patreon, that is very helpful. I use the Patreon to fund a lot of things for this podcast. Like I mentioned, the editing software, and pretty much all of my Patreon donations are just going straight to the editing software right now. So if you would like to invest in my potentially getting a better camera or a stand to hold my phone or something someday, better lighting, these are all things I might buy in the future with those funds, and just whatever random other stuff. So support my overall well-being. And yeah, that just helps me keep making more of this content, helps me set aside the time for it, and just be able to afford this awesome hobby. So love you guys. Hope that you have a good rest of your day, and thanks so much for tuning in. Please share, comment, subscribe, all those things. Feel free to drop any questions or thoughts, whatever. I do try to respond to all my comments. And remember to keep laughing. I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.